Hey folks, this is Jake Davis with my third video I have done today, and it's time to talk about some old school wrestling. That's right, I'm going to review WCW Starrcade 1997, held Sunday, December 28th, live from the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. When I do these old school videos, I usually try to talk about a video, something I'm not 100% familiar with, or hopefully haven't seen in a long time, or have never seen before. But much like, a few I've done earlier this year, this was more personal. Starrcade 97 was really the hype build to the show that made me a wrestling fan. All throughout 1997, my friends had talked to me about, you gotta watch wrestling. Every now and then I'd catch a Nitro, I'd catch a Raw. But it wasn't until the build for this match, the Sting-Hogan collision, that was when I finally became a huge wrestling fan. The hype for this particular show. So I had to talk about Starrcade 97. So, our commentators tonight are Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Bobby Heenan had walked from WCW, joining the NWO the week before this. And he didn't really join the NWO. He just wanted to stay on the commentary desk because NWO had taken over Nitro that week. The opening match is our first of 3 championships. Dean Malenko challenging Eddie Guerrero for the World Cruiserweight Championship. Now, the Cruiserweight Championship was really the hallmark, the just the damn foundation of WCW at this time. They were the best thing in the company. Guys like, and also that's another real quick thing. There's lots of wrestlers in attendance, like in the front row and on the entry ramp in those seats. Guys like Ray Jr., Harlem Heat, Disco Inferno, Chris Adams, Ultimo Dragon, and many more. And it's considering the problems they have with this show, it is absurd that so many guys sat at home. We're not booked for this show. And I'll get to that. So, like I said, Cruiserweight title. Eddie had turned heel a few months earlier, and the two of them had been feuding on and off all throughout the year. First for the U.S. title over the spring, and now for the Cruiserweight title going into Starrcade. And these guys are just both phenomenal workers. You watch Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko work together, it's very reminiscent of what would be considered main event stuff today in the WWE. But phenomenal workers. The story comes here is Dean is dominating the match, full of fire. It takes a shot and it gets thrown into the ring steps, and that kind of slows down. His knees bother him the rest of the match. Eventually, Eddie's able to hit a power bomb and a frog splash onto the knee, and he pins Dean Malenko to retain his Cruiserweight Championship. Great match. By far, the best match on the show. But of course it is. Up next is hyped as the Battle of the Giants. Kevin Nash versus the Giant, better known as the Big Show today. And boy, I got some shit to say about this match. So, first off, Scott Hall walks to the ring wearing a fake tag team title. When they used to do that, that was great. And he does his survey, his whole spiel. But then he talks about how Kevin Nash is not here tonight and he will not be here tonight. The match is canceled. The Giant wins by forfeit. Good for you, big guy. Giant then comes out and says, look, I'll eventually catch up with Kevin Nash and I'll give him what he deserves. And then he beats the shit out of Scott Hall. He chokeslams him, he power bombs him, and he leaves. Okay, this match was easily one of the top 3 most hyped, biggest built matches going into this Starrcade. Now, compare Giant and Nash compared to this year's WrestleMania, what happened with Roman and Goldberg. Roman Reigns wanted nothing to do with WrestleMania after the COVID outbreak because of his history with health issues. It was not worth the risk, and I think he made the right decision. I support Roman's decision on that. But WWE knew weeks in advance of the show that Roman was not going to be there, but it wasn't addressed until the Go Home episode of SmackDown, which aired the night before the title match aired, where Braun Strowman was going to be replacing Goldberg. But my point is, at least WWE still gave the fans a match. Could you imagine there not even being a match as Goldberg walks out and says, well, I ain't got an opponent, I guess Roman Reigns is a pussy, and leaves? Really? for the biggest show of the year. That's absurd. But, yeah, that's what they did. They could have at least had Scott Hall have a match with the Big Show, but I understand why they didn't do that, because Scott Hall is kind of tied to a match later in the show. He has stakes in that, and they want him to be involved in that. But if they also wanted to keep it in the NWO, maybe they shouldn't have booked every single member of the NWO on the card tonight, so there would be no room for replacements. So yeah, Big Show wins, or Giant wins by forfeit. Up next is a 6-man tag team match. It's the World Tag Team Champions, Rick and Scott, the Steiner brothers, the Steiner brothers, with Ted DiBiase in their corner, always carrying their belts for them. Their tag team partner is Ray Traylor, who has recently defected, the Big Boss Man, who's also recently defected from the NWO. And they're taking on the NWO team of Scott Norton, Vincent, and Conan. But wait, Conan's a no-show. He's replaced by the Macho Man Randy Savage. This is the only replacement of the show where it improves the match. Well, almost the only one. So Macho Man has this. I mean, the crowd is stoked. It's hard to believe Savage wasn't booked for the show anyway. But yeah, Savage comes out, and the crowd is stoked to see him. He walks out with Elizabeth, really chews up the scenery, get into the ring. There's some brilliant shit earlier in the match between Savage and Scott Steiner. Signs of what could have been a real clash of the madmen. But unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. For some reason, Vincent gets tagged in, which reminds me, Conan had to be hurt. Conan had to be hurt, because how the hell is Conan the guy who gets replaced when Vincent is in there? I mean, I don't care. He has no fans. He's never had a good match. If he did, it was by accident. So, he takes just a brutal beating from the Steiners and Ray Traylor all throughout this match. Eventually, the Norton tags in, and the NWO are able to get back on top, mainly because of Scott Norton and Randy Savage working together. Electric chair on Scott Steiner with a diving elbow drop from Savage, follow-up cover, and the NWO pick up the victory right here. This was just it was kind of a blah match, because it looked like they were just setting up for a quick squash with the Steiners rolling over some NWO guys, which really wasn't Starrcade worthy. But with, as soon as Savage came out, kind of instantly elevated the energy of the crowd and everything, and just, yeah, man, this match ended up being one of the highlights of the show. Up next, then we get Mean Gene Okerlund, which was weird. He usually would always do his long promos, but his 1-900-909-9900 for the WCW hotline. But he waits till here in the show. He brings out J.J. Dillon, who's going to address who is going to be refereeing the main event between Sting and Hogan, with a massive historic year-and-a-half build going into that. The whole deal here is that there's so much negotiation, so much controversy, and so much stakes in this that they've actually decided to just pull a name out of the hat to see who's going to be the referee, and they've pulled Nick Patrick, a guy who's on the record for being on the bye for the NWO, but JJ vouched for him. He says he's went through his suspension, his all this kind of shit, probation. JJ vouches for Nick Patrick, which just makes JJ look stupid. Up next, we have a battle of the NFL superstars. It's Bill Goldberg versus Steve Mongo McMichael. Now, of course, the streak was on, but Goldberg was only about 3 months into his career at this time. And, I guess the whole deal was that they had been teasing these two were going to fight. They supposedly had history back in the NFL, in kayfabe. And, Mongo's never, ever, ever good in the ring. I mean, say what you want about Goldberg, he can only go squash matches. Yes, but Goldberg is an attraction. Not since Andre the Giant had there been such a phenomenal presence in pro wrestling. And not since Goldberg has there been one. Brock Lesnar is something to be seen. A sight to behold, sure, no doubt. But he never quite drew like Goldberg, did he? Anyhow, Goldberg wins, obviously. Like I said, it's during the streak. Milo takes a really scary looking. It looks like he's really timid. Doesn't want to take the table spot, but he falls off the apron, falls to the table, and then no sells it, which is really weird. Eventually, of course, Jackhammer, Billboy, who's next? Anyhow, next up is a Ravens Rules match. Chris Benoit taking on Raven, obviously. Now, this one pisses me off because the whole build for a month or so was Benoit will come out, he has a match scheduled with Raven. Raven says, no, you're going to fight this guy. You're going to fight Sit Boy instead. You're going to fight Kidman instead. Week after week after week after week. And they just do it again for Starrcade. Raven says he's not going to fight again tonight, which gets nuclear heat, and quite frankly, the crowd never gets back into the match. They eventually did have their match at Starrcade. It sold out the next month in January, and Benoit won. But the steam was gone. This was the payoff. It's Starrcade. This was the payoff. Also, same thing happened with Kevin Nash and Giant. They did have their matches sold out, and Kevin Nash would win. Seriously injured the Big Show for real, but they played it as like it was a severe broken neck. I don't think it was that bad. I think it was more like a sprain in his neck, but I'm not 100% sure. But I don't think he actually broke the neck. But yeah, it was a very scary botch jackhammer, which is weird because he successfully jackknifed Giant before that show, but just I guess I wouldn't assume Kevin Nash would intentionally hurt a man. I won't assume anything of that of a pro wrestler. I wouldn't want to, even though I've seen it fucking happen. Anyhow, so Saturn replaces Raven, and like the whole flock's there. Like I said, it's Raven, Kidman, Sick Boy, Hammer, Lodi, Riggs, and Benoit tries to fight him off. He does a valiant effort, but eventually he gets overpowered, takes one hit after another, gets even flowed, and gets locked in the rings of Saturn and taps out. The point is that this is Starrcade, the biggest show of the year, and 3 matches had replacements. Replacements on the night. It's not like, somebody got hurt going into the build and he had to pick up, which that's an issue coming up in a minute too. But anyhow, yeah, this was, and also aside from that, like I said, once Raven said he's not wrestling tonight, the crowd lost interest, kind of just on their hands during this match, and I don't blame them. Benoit and Saturn are terrific workers and could have had a great match, but that wasn't what was booked. That was not what you promised these people, and it pissed them off. Anyhow, next up was Buff Bagwell versus Lex Luger. Buff Bagwell has Vincent in his corner, or eventually Vincent comes out to the ring at some point, I think, during the match. He's there, but oh boy, this was wow. Unfortunate. Now, the build for this was fine. The whole deal was that Buff had gotten 2 or 3 totally shady victories over Lex going into the build of this match. So this was clearly Lex's time to kick the shit out of Bagwell. But no, it's not a brawl. It's not a slap around. It's not a squash. It is long, slow headlocks and boring stomps. It was a bad match. I audibly said out loud how fucking bored I was to my wife, my wife at one point watching this match. It's a really fucking boring match. And look, Buff Bagwell is, never was a great wrestler, but is a great character, great showman, great at getting that obnoxious heat. You know what I mean? And Lex Luger, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't give a shit about the push in '97, the issue with Miss Elizabeth. To just sit there and totally write off Lex Luger as if he's not a legend in the business is totally unfair. And if you're going to sit there and tell me he's not a great wrestler, he's not a good wrestler, never had a good match, you've clearly never watched his run in the 1980s in the NWA. Watch some of his runs as U.S. champion. Watch his Starrcade match with Ric Flair, I think, in 1988. It's one of the best matches of the decade. I put it up there right next to Steamboat and Savage. It is phenomenal. Seriously. Luger is unappreciated in this day and age. The finish comes, Norton interferes, Savage interferes, eventually double latch handle, costing Luger the match. Buff Bagwell falls on top of him and gets the win. So Lex gets screwed out of another match against Buff Bagwell, and they don't even bother pushing Buff after this. It's not like he goes into a feud with the US or TV title going forward. He just kind of mellows at right where he is until he breaks his neck in April. And Lex and Savage go have a couple month feud, but the fact that the guy who won the match isn't who the story is about, that sucks. And the match really sucked. Easily worst match of the show. Up next is for the United States Championship, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, defending against Diamond Dallas Page. My all-time favorite wrestler, at least my all-time favorite wrestling character, my all-time favorite wrestling babyface for sure too. It was a big part of what made me such an addictive wrestling fan was his run at this time. And this was a replacement too. Page is replacing Ric Flair. Ric Flair was supposed to fight Kurt Hennig in this match, but I don't know if it was kayfabe, I don't know if it was a real life injury, or had something more to do with his on again, off again, a backstage aggression with Eric Bischoff. Because not long after this, a few months after this, he'd end up being taken off TV for the most of 1998 because he pulled a no-show. But yeah, he was supposed to fight Hennig tonight. A couple weeks going to the show, the match gets changed to Flair gets written off. Match gets changed to DDP getting a title shot, but that is to everyone's benefit. Page, crowd's way behind Page. Hennig is a low-life heel as he always is. Several failed attempts to the Diamond Cutter earlier on. The finish comes where Hennig hits an Irish whip, goes for a hip toss. Page kind of like floats around him. Diamond Cutter out of fucking nowhere. And yes, he always say Randy Orton hits a Diamond Cutter out of nowhere, but DDP could turn anything into a Diamond Cutter. You think you got him in a power bomb, but you're about to get hit with the bang. Anyhow, crowd goes insane. DDP is finally anointed as the United States Heavyweight Champion. He ended up holding it for 4 months. The single greatest reign with this championship of all time, in my opinion, as far as a fan. Through what I've experienced, over the years as a fan, as a run as a champion. Because he defended the title pretty much, if he was in a singles match, he was defending the belt. He made Chris Benoit, he elevated Chris Benoit, he elevated Raven, he gave shots to guys like Canyon, or Mortis at the time, and Renegade before he unfortunately took his own life. It was a title defense on the Nitro or Saturday night or something like that when he defended the title against Chris Jericho a few weeks after this, and Chris Jericho snapped and attacked the David Peltzer. Ended up the fucking star-defining run of Chris Jericho's, and that wouldn't have happened without DDP's U.S. title run. Even the build to Goldberg streak was kind of tied to this DDP run. This was a phenomenal run as U.S. champion. It was only a few months. And yeah, man, this was one of my favorite moments of the show. I mean, it's not as good a match as Malenko and Guerrero, but for me personally, nostalgia-wise, this was the highlight of the show. Up next, we cut to one of those ridiculous backstage interviews where Mark Madden is interviewing Eddie Guerrero. Just thank God we can't really hear anything Madden is saying. Up next is a match with Nitro on the line. Monday Nitro is being defended by WCW, represented by the living legend Larry Zbyszko, and the NWO wants to take it over, and their representative is Eric Bischoff. Also, if Zbyszko wins this match, of course, if the NWO win, they take over Monday Nitro. It's NWO Monday Nitro from here on out. WCW can have Saturdays. and of course, if Zbyszko wins, not only does WCW keep Nitro, but he also gets a one-on-one match against Scott Hall next month at that pay-per-view. And added to this, just a few weeks because they had signed Bret Hart after the Montreal Screwjob, but Bret Hart was under a 30-day no-compete clause, so he couldn't fight at Starrcade. He's made the guest referee for this match. Look, Eric Bischoff's not a pro wrestler. Larry Zbyszko was a few years into his retirement, so this is a sloppy, ugly match, but it's a spectacle match. It's more entertaining than, like, the shit Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler did a few years back, mainly because it's so much shorter, and there's not 4 of the fucking things. There's just this one match. There's a lot of stupid things. Bret Hart is clearly more lenient towards Bischoff than Zbyszko. Just to kind of tease he may join the NWO, which he eventually did anyway. Eventually, Zbyszko's knocked out. He's kicked. Well, he's supposed to be kicked with a steel slate or something in his boot. But when he goes for the kick, you can see it flying out towards the crowd. But he knocks out Zbyszko. Brett won't call it. Scott runs in. He puts Scott Hall in the sharpshooter. Zbyszko locks a twist Eric Bischoff is some shit. Bischoff taps out. And Brett never calls for the bell. He just raises Zbyszko's hand, so Zbyszko wins. It's sloppy, it's ugly, it's stupid, it's botch-tastic, but it's a fun slice of stupid. Main event time. It's time to bring out Michael Buffer as the master of ceremonies to present the main event. It was weird. There's no match packages on this show. And yeah, I kind of always forget when I go back and watch old WCW that they didn't really have match packages back in their heyday, their best era. So yeah, here it is, man. Hollywood Hulk Hogan defending the World Championship against Sting. It's Sting! I was a little disappointed because I thought, at first I was assuming that they were just dubbing over the traditional NWO theme over Hogan's Voodoo Child. But Hogan's not he's not mouthing it, he's not doing the chop it down gesture. So it's like, oh shit, man, he wasn't doing that yet? I could have swore he was already doing Voodoo Child. But I guess I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong about being wrong, because I'd like to be wrong about that. Okay, everyone knows how this goes. Sting gets his ass kicked for way too long. He has one hope spot that gets squashed about 12 seconds in. Big boot, leg drop, and Hogan pins him as clean as a whistle. Utter heartbreak. Bret Hart comes out, doesn't let him ring the bell, he knocks out Nick Patrick. A couple of NWO guys, Buff Norton, a couple of them run out, call some interference. Stinger slaps him to the side. Death drop, sharpshooter, or scorpion death lock. Hogan taps and Sting wins. This was a clusterfuck. There's all of this, it was a fast count, but it wasn't a fast count. There's all these rumors about miscommunication, politics, screw jobs, all this kind of crap. Who knows? The point is that even the booking of itself, why they had their own long-running storyline, why are they trying to reference the Montreal Screwjob? The only thing they achieved is they tried to cash in on the Montreal Screwjob long before WWE did. Pathetic. Anyhow, they ruined this main event. If Patrick should have just screwed him, rebooking the finish. Here it goes. Sting takes a bean, a long bean, gets a huge comeback, goes for the scorpion death drop, thumb to the eye from the referee, plain and simple. Leg drop, roll up, whatever you want. Fast count, an actual, obvious, visible fast count. Hogan tries to leave with the screw job. Give everybody a second to think that this is how it's going to end. Then Brett comes out, throws Hart back into the ring, and Patrick back in the ring, or whatever you want to do, or knock out Nick Patrick still and count it himself since he was a referee that night. All you really fucking needed was the actual fast count. It would have still been a stupid finish. It would have still been very tasteless to play off the Montreal Screwjob, especially when the victim of that incident is right fucking there and it just happened to the guy. Anyhow, look, I'm not going to shit on this show too much because, I mean, of the nostalgia factor, if it wasn't for all this, good, the bad, and the ugly, I wouldn't be the wrestling fan I became. And yeah, a lot of ugly shit ended up coming out of this. And by the way, that Scott Hall, Larry Zbyszko match ended up happening. Zbyszko would win it by disqualification when Dusty Rhodes joined the NWO. Somebody should rebook that whole situation, which I did. Go watch it. I only got 2 fucking Booker Mode videos. I need to do more. Anyhow, I hope y'all enjoyed this old school wrestling video. Hope y'all could hear the Bob Marley. Like, share, comment, and subscribe if you want to. I'm Jake Davis, and I'll catch you on the fly.